I suppose I could just, by way of an opening comment, say I'm aware that we are very late in the day in terms of the program. A number of people have left. I think all the youth have gone out of the room, and that's a pity. Is there one?
There's a youth, there's a youth.
No, Jackie, you don't qualify. And so, yeah, I'm going to try and keep it brief. So, there are good and bad things about being the last speaker of the day. The one is, I could get up and say, just as Ivor said, and I walk out the room. But also the fact that Ivor and I have worked together for many years. A lot of what you see on the screen, of course, I'll just go and ticket if I needed to do that. And also, it helped for me then to not, and we didn't consult over our presentations, but I'm glad I didn't then go into some of the points Ivor raised, which is not understanding the ideological, philosophical, and ethical, he called it, and we do call it, issues that should also frame our work. How we understand what we do, because it's definitely not functional education. It's not formal education. It's not the TVET. It's not the general education. It's not the skill stuff in the ways it's defined. Not that there's one saying those shouldn't exist. Of course they should, and they do. But I think we are missing out on a lot else that we've been speaking about a bit this today here. So just I in some ways, like Ivor, using a lot of pictorial imaging so that I can just talk to them. The first part of it's going to be a little bit more boring. I want to quickly tell you about the organization I work for, DVV International, as you have heard. We've been internationally, we've existed for over 50 years. In Germany, there's a role in coordinating the associations of adult education centers and associations. So that's the one leg of the organization's work, and the rest is the work we do out in various countries across the globe. On the continent, we work in about 10 or 12 countries now. And we work with NGO partners primarily, and across, as you see there, on the various continents. So if thanks also, Christine, for flipping through.
I'm just trying to get your image up as well so people could see,
okay,
see you. Sorry, am I trying to do too much here?
Maybe we flip, or should I do that to speed?
No, I'm going to put it on right now. There it is. There it is. Now people can see you.
I'm in that flip. Okay.
Okay, I'll fix it. I'll get you. I'll get you. Don't worry.
So yeah, the next slide, when we get to it.
There it is. Okay.
Shows a global image of where we're located, just so that people get a picture, literally a picture of it. But it's not coming up yet.
Oh, next one. Okay, excuse me.
Okay, there we go. So basically, the blue shaded areas in the globe, the image of the globe there you see is where we work. Sorry, it's not coming up.
I know.
You're not sharing.
It is shared. It is shared.
Well, it's not moving on the screen in the room. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. No. Excuse me.
Maybe we take me away.
I'll do it again.
Okay. I will move on in the meantime because again the time issue. So in the country we work with 5 NGO organizations. The one is ELF. There's still 2 colleagues left here. Lynn has been in the trenches and Apollo with me and others for a long time, as was mentioned at the start. And also ELF, of course, Adult Learning Forum as a partner in this event. You may have seen on one of the notices that went out. We also work, thanks. We also work with a number of other organizations, and I want to just note the Women's Circle, the second NGO partner we work with, because I'll refer to some of the work we've been doing together, and they've been around for a long time. Jackie was right there at the start, the very first event, the launch of the Women's Circle in Artscape, if I remember correctly. Some of these organizations have been at it for over the years, and we've shifted. I mean, we've shifted, many of us, on what we did all those years ago. We also work with 2 university units, the one that Ivor has just left at Mandela University, subset, as you heard he was from, and then the Center for Education Rights at UJ. We have a partnership, and this is quite important because it talks to the focus of this gathering, as well as what the colleagues were speaking about before, in terms of the role that community colleges and community learning centers need to play. I say need to play, must play, I could have said, right? The role that they must fulfill. Our partnership, the MOU, we have with the department for the last 4 years now, and we haven't only just started working with the national department for the last 4 years through a memorandum of understanding. We've been working with the department over many, many years. In South Africa, in fact, we exist for more than 20 years, going on to 25 years, in fact, right? And so our role in this MOU, the agreement we have, is to support non-formal education within the college system. Now, we also had lots of conversation this morning, and I know there was meant to be another input that would have focused on the sort of general education schooling area. We obviously heard from Helga about TVET, but of course, and what's happening in higher education. Of course, each of these have their own social purpose. They fulfill a role. Again, we've discussed some of this. Adult education, and again, Iva would have mentioned this, was framed mostly as a second chance schooling opportunity. Go back there, get the qualification or certificate, the general education or further education certificate that you were not able to achieve, not because you're part of that neat community. In documents you are, not in education, employment, and training, but because the system failed you. Let's just call it what it is. The system fails the youth. And they fall out of this, and again, Ashley and others, we were talking about this today here. And we need to say, how do we address this in the formal system? But now what do we do about these youth that have gone back to these community learning centers? Pretty much under similar conditions. The curriculum is much the same that they address, that they need to get through. The conditions in the centers are not any better, as you heard Mara and others talking about, but we expect these youth to be successful, say in quotes. Success, a whole other measure. You can determine what it means for you, as we all do. So these are really, really important questions, but the issue goes back to what is the purpose of non-formal education in the community learning centers and college space. So second chance learning, that's been going on for a while. What the policy says, and I refer to a number of documents, I'm glad I didn't go gung-ho on that, says we need to shift. We've been saying this for a long time. Iva and I sat on a ministerial committee when Naledi Pandor was in her last reign as Minister of Education, if you remember, all the way back then. The white paper he refers to goes back, I think, to 2013. And I was sitting in a national meeting with colleagues from the National Department last week online, and I was saying, we've not moved. In any substantive way, we've not moved in terms of that mandate. And you know what? It's not DVV's mandate. It's not your and my mandate. It's government's mandate. It's something that the tick boxes need to be filled in by them. So what DVV is trying to do with our NGO and other partners, academic partners, is to try and assist in bringing the non-formal education into the space. Now, for most countries, the last bullet point there, for most countries, a one-size-fits-all adult education approach has been adopted. And we did this for a long time, as we were just saying, realizing that that's not going to help. And when you go through the document, and I may refer to one or two of the points in it, where it speaks of all these grand things you hear about, inclusion, access, diversity. I mean, these become like throwaway terms nowadays because we don't see it happening. And I want to just show the examples that with our work with the Women's Circle in particular is what we've been trying to do. Now, we've been working with some of the CLCs, and I'll show you some examples of our work with educators and others. We've been working with a pilot college in the Western Cape out in Worcester. Okay, the first pilot college, I should say. First pilot CLC, Community Learning Center. But also, for the last number of months, through one of the officials, that's really nice. Way
oh, dear. Oh, dear.
Okay,
I guess they
want
us to go. Sorry, guys.
All right, I'm going to ramble on.
There may be a challenge.
Will it come back on, Jackie? No.
Okay.
Parliament found a way to get around ISCON. Okay. All right. So I suppose the image will come up in a moment. So I was saying we're working with the Worcester Learning Center for the last several months of this year, going back to the beginning of the year, as well as TOES Worcester Learning Center, a fully fledged, I want to say properly structured, and implementing community learning center. Amazing principal who runs the place, a handful of educators who really tried hard. But again, the social issues we spoke of before spill over into that space. So my colleague Vanessa Reynolds, known to some in this room from the Women's Circle, I've been working with the educators, and I took off my bureaucratic hat, and I've been working with a group of youth from the center. And there are over 570 or so, mostly youth again at the center. Okay, they come in every day and they do the formal exams and the like. And because Ellen, the principal, is a committed person, she said, please come in and help us with some of the non-formal stuff, but also help our educators to better understand their role in terms of non-formal education, but beyond, you know, the kind of work we do. I took off that bureaucratic hat and went into that space and to Toes Review, which is not a formal center. And I'll show some examples and some images and tell a little story about that in a moment. Because I wanted to get a sense. And we were talking about, you know, this usual stuff about impoverished communities, the various social issues, and. But of course, when you're in a rural area, and I think someone said this just earlier, whether you work in a rural area, whether it's a township locally, and, you know, and many spaces around the country, and we work in other parts of the country. Next week we'll be in East London, Tanzania, and other communities there, and rural communities as well. The situations and what people face every day is very different. Let me tell you one thing just out of the working with the youth in Worcester. I was, in a way, not surprised, but I was also horrified, if you can understand that. You know what the conditions are, but when you hear it and you see it and you experience that youth there, it's almost as if they've been living in a bubble in some ways. The circumstances, the conditions are probably very similar to other working class areas that people come from, the youth come from in this case. But the limited knowledge about their own context, their own histories, the towns just down the road from them, the social issues, understanding the things we take for granted, that racism is bad, or even identifying people in categories of race, xenophobia, patriarchy, gender, unpacking some of these issues with the youth was so revealing with how little we achieve through our formal education system, because that's why they're there. But these are meant to be youth who are going to help to be, as we used to say in struggle, Helga, you will remember that the youth are the reason for our struggle and the flowers of the future. Is that how it goes? Yeah. And I don't see that happening, because we're letting the youth down every day with the way or the lack of what we are doing. So let me leave Worcester for the moment, because, you know, I can go on about that. In terms of our approach, keep that slide up. So, in terms of our approach, again, it's not a prescription. There's nothing prescriptive about, you know, how we engage and approach our again, as I was explaining, our education approach is that our curriculum is one that emerges. We don't go in there with a neatly packaged curriculum that assumes we know the needs, because we don't. Again, I just got through saying that, you know, whether in a rural context, whether it's a youth of one age, whether it's male, female, I mean, the whole range of permutations of issues that you need to be considering. We can't consider it. We can hear and facilitate processes that support communities and community structures and community learning centers to then better understand the roles that they will play. The point is that we don't live there. We don't stay there. We go back to our spaces. Whether, as Mara said, they're white picket fences or anything else, is not the point. We do not know what people go through on a daily basis. Unpacking that with them, if we go to the next slide. Go back one. I just want to use that image there as an example. So what we do in that process, and Vanessa is there in is that red? If my eyes are not failing me, jersey on the far side with a florally dress on. Is that a dress or a skirt? I get teased for not knowing the difference. So what we were doing there with the community is a mapping exercise. So we facilitate a mapping exercise so that they identify, you know, what, first of all, the community is about, just in terms of this, what did I ever have those hang glider people, whatever you call them, there, looking down on their communities and saying this. It was fascinating. Across 4 areas of their community in Toes Rivier, people didn't know what existed. And I'm not talking about kilometers away. We're talking about, you know, an easy 5-10 minute walk to get into this next little, I won't call it a location, but you know what I mean, a part of the community. That in itself was amazing, right? So people needed to understand and have conversations around these things. You know, what is where? Where's the clinic? Where's the police station? Where's the safety spot or the dangerous spots? You know, and the list goes on. So we go through this process with them. And I think for our educators in learning centers to understand and to learn how to facilitate these approaches is a huge leap that needs to happen. So our organization with our partners have been trying to support the department in this process. Again, the policy said this in 2013 and previous permutations of similar documents in policy from before. So we're not short on policy again, are we? But we're not getting there. We're not able to do this. We also speak about how to, and it came up here this morning, about how to address or how to work in our communities with the issues of violence or whatever may be happening and how this spills over from schools, etc. So just to another image on the Toesrivier example. So in the Daily Maverick, and I was happy to share this article with people. It goes back to earlier in this year. It was a really good article, good in the way it described issues in the community. There are, of course, questions one could raise about some of the approaches they're suggesting. But this is some of the stats that came out. Not all of this article, but 85% is what a business report tells us is the unemployment rate in Toesrivier. Wow. 95% is what Gift of the Givers told us because they work in the community. They bring in food and so forth because of that condition. 26% of youth are of children are stunted, right? We're building a new South Africa, people. So it's described as a town with a multitude of socioeconomic problems and risks. Okay, it's a context where formal education exists. There are no-fee schools. In fact, we work in a no-fee school as a space, right? The principal, amazing person again. Assistant teachers, other community people engaged in all sorts of projects have been brought together. We didn't know them before they came into the area. The community knew who these people were and brought them together. And there's a core group now who've been taking this process of mapping and, what are the key issues and so forth that Vanessa, way more experienced than I am in facilitating, and this is what we've been doing. Now, Jackie's not in the room at the moment, but it doesn't matter. It's not a secret, but, when we speak about, I think it was, the point around safety and so forth and what's happening in communities, Jackie used the term of values, and I don't want to nitpick, okay? We all talk about values. We all think values are important and so forth. My point around this is we also cannot take for granted some of the assumptions we make when we say things like values. And I love Jackie to bits. I'm not, picking on her. I'm simply saying we speak like we say access and, redress and all these wonderful things. How do you make that happen in a space like this? I'm baffled, right? So while, at the moment you have a formal education system going with really good educators, principals, and the like, what we are trying to do and the communities do, and many communities do it, we are not special as DVV and, there are many organizations do a range of amazing things to try and, in this case, stave off the destruction, that this community faces. But of course, communities are not going to let their areas go. They're not going to see their children suffer any more than they already do. But the issues are so many. I mean, the writing's on the wall, literally. People are hungry. You sit with an issue of despair, food insecurity, and a whole range of things. I don't know how many of you know Toesrivier is a rail town. Goes back more than 100 years. And of course, like many towns, if you think of Atlantis down the West Coast, when businesses were given tax breaks during apartheid to go down there, once they'd made their money, they walked away. And you know what became of Atlantis with the alcohol and other substance abuse issues? So despite all of that, the heading there speaks of hope, working with what we call a pedagogy of hope in a condition of despair. So again, yes, we have the policy. No shortage of policy. Many of us have helped to develop some of those. Going back all the years, says all the great things. We need to develop a fair, equitable, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic society. Many people could stand at the flag with their hand on their hearts and recite that nowadays. The problem is that what do we require to create the conditions for that to thrive? So Jackie, sorry, you were out of the room. I was saying, we talk of values and, all these wonderful words. In principle, we agree on them. In reality, it's a much bigger struggle. And when you're in a place like Toesrivier, you get a good sense. And it's just one town. It's not special. It's special in its own way of its challenges and faces and how they try and deal with it. But really amazing people. What we need, of course, and I'm not going to go through all of that, what it says in policy, but it does say in the second bullet point, we need expanded access
We need increased diversity of provision. There needs to be cooperation between institutions, and very little of that happens across the various institutions. We need a system responsive to the needs of citizens. Okay, I'll pause there. We need a system that's responsive to the needs of citizens. I'm sorry, I don't think we have that. Also, the broader development and societal objectives. Again, they listed in many, many, many documents. How do we get there? All right. So what's partly blocked out there is we say we've been really, really. Well, I'm saying we've been really, really slow to move in this regard. And again, this is a space for community education centers, legally constituted, with very little money, even to do what they did before non-formal education was introduced into the system. On paper, at least, I can't say it's properly introduced into the system, but for ourselves and with some of our colleagues, the Adult Learning Forum, Women's Circles, Popular Education Program, etc., we've been working at this for a long time. These are workshops we've held with community educators in various provinces. Top left, KZN, top right, Eastern Cape, bottom left, Western Cape, bottom right, Gauteng, and so and so. We've gone around the country. We tried to show a model. We've brought this back to the Department of Education, and we are now wanting that to be obviously scaled up, and how we make this, we bring substance to the policy. Of course, you need to do that with funding. We've oriented National Department of Education officials, and this goes back, as you can see, a number of years. Even before 2019, we were working with some. The person in the bottom right-hand side of the picture is now the head of adult education in the province. And so what I'm saying is we've been trying to do this at the policy and orienting level with various people. So what we do is we bring our community education approaches in non-formal education and community learning that, again, Ivor gave a number of examples on, and take these practices into what is really a formal learning space of community learning centers. They are really still very formal. It is about formal assessment. It is about it's about exams. It is about a prescribed curriculum, etc. The benefit of that to communities that are struggling and really battling today is what we need to confront. Yes, people should go and get a second chance at it. Yes, they should get a formal education if they can. And yes, they should, I don't know why, believe there's going to be jobs in the economy for them. Because I don't see a lot of that happen, okay? But those examples of how communities have come together in that group of women, and of course there were mostly women in the Athlone, not Athlone Civic, that little hall nearby, all of those women turned that park in Athlone from a place where substance abuse, men urinating, and I say men urinating because, hey, men behave in particular ways, don't they, in public spaces. And they converted that place by demanding of the city that a safe and clean space be provided for the young people in that community. Now, people say power of communities, power. Yeah, that's power there. They made that happen. They didn't wait for some government official, public works, or whatever it was. They made it happen. They don't wait. As in the many pictures Ivor showed, people didn't wait to make that happen. And you know what? On the left-hand side, it's a little circle that goes around that park. There's a shebeen right there, a legal one now, apparently, right? But that space is sacred now. So there are possibilities. What Paulo Freire and others speak about pedagogies of hope when we operate in that space. Thank you. What also, and again, I'm showing these are possibilities of what can happen. On the left, a group of youth at schools, and we typically don't work in school formal spaces. That's not our mandate, and that's not what we're funded for. But youth leadership is crucially important. But again, these youth are not the youth in Worcester, or not the youth in Touwsrivier, or not the youth in Eastern Cape where we'll go next week and work around there. So we've got to be mindful that we don't do this one size fits all. Let's have a curriculum, let's take it through. Of course, there are issues. We deal with these patriarchy, gender stuff. You must deal with that. And all youth should be, engaging in this and be facilitated through that. Like the image of solar panels and so forth that I was showing in their example, excuse me, in Gqeberha. This is in Athlone, in the Women's Circles space that we support as well. Project 20 by 9030, if I got that right. Project 90 by 2030, sorry, the years at the end, right? They are the two facilitators there, and with the group of people, because again, apparently you can't depend on Eskom. you know, developing the old solar example of possibilities for themselves. Again, speak of possibilities and that which we need to deal with. There's a group of young women in the Robertson area, so very rural winemaking area. Many of these women, young women, told stories, and again, that's Vanessa facilitating there. And I was at that particular workshop. Usually, as a male, I don't go into those spaces, but for a short while, I was allowed in because I asked for permission. Because of what they deal with, it's issues that women want to talk about, young women want to talk about, without the presence of men that they speak about, that typically abuse them in those spaces in which they live and work, and as they migrate between spaces in their communities. So I went down there to do my officialdom thing to say that this is not something really happening. But again, we speak about addressing gender-based violence. We speak about addressing all these many challenges that we face. But we are not, and again, community learning centers must be a space for these sorts of conversations and workshops and facilitation to happen. We are doing them in small ways because that's all we have resourcing for. At the beginning of December, Lynn already put it in your diary, the first week of December in Johannesburg, there will be a national workshop with the national department, with all their college principals and academic deputies and the like, to engage in how we actually start to move this forward. Our organization leaves South Africa at the end of 2025, okay? Now, that doesn't mean the world stops. All it means is that there's a source of funding that will no longer be coming to this country for this particular purpose. The organizations will continue to exist. Maybe harder to get, funding because of what we are able to produce or contribute at this point. But bottom left-hand side, she's left the room. There's Mara sitting. That picture is a workshop of educators in the Western Cape of Western Cape CLC educators. And on the right, I'm not sure which province that is. I can't remember. But us facilitating this. And again, you'll see they are mapping, they are considering, they are looking at various texts and so forth, because we make no assumptions on needs and let them decide that, as they work through that. What Ivan and I should have spoken about is that we mustn't use the same images on the materials page. So you see that publication on the left that you referred to, so I won't go into it, that we also co-funded with Subset, and of course a whole number of others on the right, the Remaking the World, because we are very optimistic that we should remake this world. It's a publication we launched in Johannesburg that we produce also with the Women's Circle and Women's Stories. I've raised, and I'm going to finish up soon, I've raised the matter of cooperatives and other ways of existing. In the way forward, from our own practice, meaning our own theory and practice, the models do exist. I just showed quick snapshots, and Ivor showed many more of what is possible. But certainly, again, and we've said this here before, today and many times, that the state and wider support is required to grow, implement these models in community learning centers across the country, not little pockets here and there. Because it's great to have the models, but if you don't root it and scale it up and make sure it's properly resourced, then we're really band-aiding in a way, right? Or we're tinkering, to put it differently. So again, adequately resourced capacity for CLCs, and I think I've mentioned this as well, for non-formal education. Exactly, it's in the policy. We've got to fund what we say has to be implemented. Otherwise, why do we have it there, right? And these need to be ring-fenced funding. It's often a matter of funding is put here and then it gets used for something else, right? So we need to actually have that. And there's still this myth that non-formal education, and someone said we shouldn't call it non-formal because we make it a non-entity of formal, if you get what I'm saying, right? We should find another way for it. We prefer popular education, of course, because that's the kind of non-formal education we do, which is a people's education. Non-formal education is what businesses do and many people do, but it doesn't have a deliberate purpose. And that's the difference, of course, with what we do. It has a deliberate purpose. Sorry, just go back one again. So we must debunk this myth that there's no value in non-formal education. When we first developed an implementation plan for non-formal, I sat online with a number of government officials in putting it to them. It was COVID and we couldn't get together. And a first group of about 20 or so national people in the bureaucracy came together with me. And a number of them said, how are we going to assess this thing you call non-formal education? I wasn't surprised at the question, of course. They need an assessment. They need a measurement. My answer was, there is, for me, the ultimate measurement is when people don't come back to what you're doing. When they don't return, they didn't see value in it. People don't come to these workshops because we tell them it's a good thing to do. They come back because they believe those 20 plus youth in Worcester, the educators in Worcester as well, the people, they come there, they work in between the times we are there on the tools and whatever, so that when we come there, they are ready to go. So people believe in this stuff, not because we say so again. So the value is certainly there again, not because of us, right? So the thing that qualification and accreditation and all these things is all we should look at. We should really just dump that idea. People have agency. We've been saying this, and again, Ivor has shown many. People have agency to change their local conditions, but they need the state and others of us to help. It's as simple as that. It's not rocket science. Where's that support? Okay, go to the next one. Okay, and I think this is about it. So continuing the way forward, cooperatives. We have stokvels in this country. I don't know how many of you know. The stokvel, what do we call it? Networks, because that's what they are. Networks of people who come together for whatever their own purposes are. The money that moves through stokvels is worth billions annually. Would you believe that? Who gives that recognition and credit through the official formal system? Cooperatives are what people do traditionally in South Africa, in townships, in rural areas. People have cooperated. Just when you run a proper cooperative, you organize it in a certain way, right? But we've pushed all of that aside. You know that there was meant to be a cooperative bank set up in the new South Africa to support small initiatives like this. Where did that go? The big banks took over, and that's all it is. And guess what? Companies like Old Mutual are now moving into that cooperative space for a couple of years now. They see the money to be spun around there, don't they? So we don't have to formalize everything before we give it value, all right? So meaningful work rather than waiting for jobs in a shrinking market economy. People can develop. They work every day. They do meaningful things with their lives. They have to survive. So, you know, let's recognize that unfortunately, the big businesses are not interested in you. Just a quick anecdotal point, but really useful. I tried to do something at the bank, and I was struggling, and, you know, oh, we didn't have the staff and all the sorts of things. And then it reminded me that the banks, I don't know if you know, they shed 10,000 workers not so long ago. 10,000 workers across the banks, they shed them. The unions tried to go to court. The courts went, sorry, their business, they can do as they want to, as long as they follow the procedures. In whose interests? This is the question always. In whose interest is the education approaches we do, what we do, how we do it, etc. There is a context, isn't it? So I'm not so reliant and hopeful that big business are going to provide jobs. We need to find other ways of engaging, and there are ways. So community, non-formal, and popular education approaches provide an opportunity for us to think out of the box. When I say that, I always think of Lynn. Lynn always used this term for many years when we've been in the trenches with the department. We got to think out of the box. So Lynn, I'm saying it here again, using your words, but it's true. We need to value people's knowledge. People have knowledge. When you facilitate and support them, the agency comes through and they start to transform stuff, right? So we need the system, whatever you define that to be, parliament, government, whoever you are here, needs to be supportive so that things can actually thrive and change. It's a struggle with community learning centers, with the college space and all that sort of thing, but we plod on and we'll see what happens in the next couple of years, if not sooner. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.